Well, here's the kicker. We're not really live. We are recording it, and then we will post it on our website,
Okay.
YouTube.
So we
YouTube.
can edit it.
Well, we were just been having some technology issues, so we
delete
just
once.
this is a sure way to make sure it's recorded.
Great. All right. Well, we will call the August 22nd, 2023 Historic Commission meeting. Can we do a roll call?
Will Roddy Bush here?
Jeff Howes here.
Chris Mowen here.
John Sampen here.
And Chris Tracy will be joining us shortly. Approval of minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review our June meeting minutes?
That look good.
Any comments?
I move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Meeting minutes have been approved. Our administrative items, our next meeting is scheduled for September 22nd. Unless there's any objections, we'll move forward with that date. 22nd at 4 p.m.
Sounds good.
All right.
It's fine.
Our local designations, we have University Hall. I don't think there's been much movement since our last meeting. They are putting together a plaque, correct?
Well, yes, it will eventually come. They're not communicating with me, but I will keep checking on it.
It sounds like it might not be exactly what we'd envision, so I don't know if we want to propose something different for the courthouse or if we want to keep some of that similarity between the two buildings.
I would propose we create our own. That something that I'm imagining they're doing a rather small plaque. They're not representing any of the old the old building that was first constructed, and I'm a little disappointed in that. But perhaps we can come up with a design. Doesn't have to be anything too fancy, and something that I guess that we can afford, since it would probably be our commission paying for it, right?
For the county courthouse.
Yeah, I don't know how that would work.
Yeah.
Do we want to think about making it consistent with the signs that we put up downtown so that there's, a visual?
Maybe a
associate-
color consistency and a print. Yeah, I think that would be. I would be in favor of that.
Okay. I think that's something we could probably wrap into our signage discussion then for our big project for the next year and some months. 10 months now, I think. All right. Former South Main School, I have not heard anything from the owner.
And I have to say, I was late in writing him, so I haven't heard back from him yet.
Okay, that's fine. He thought he might be in town at some point.
Yeah. So I asked him when, but it was only this week that I wrote him, so.
Okay. We'll just keep that on as a reminder to touch base with him. Our Boomtown District Strategic Plan goal, we've all been discussing over the last few months the possibility of starting with the North Maple District. So where we stand with that, we have a letter that would go with the packet. Excuse me. Kind of a why this would be beneficial that John, you put together. And we've been discussing these guidelines that they would not be part of the packet, but something that we could all reference if there were any questions. Part of the FAQs, after thinking about this a little more and discussing some thoughts with Heather, we thought an FAQ that kind of had the top 10, what we saw as the top 10 like common questions would be a great way to kind of represent what the ordinance would entail. So I don't know if any of you had a chance to come up with some ideas of that would be. Okay, great. Just to get our, if we could combine them all and kind of, I'm sure we have some overlap, some top, come up with those.
Do you
It doesn't
want,
have to be 10. That's not really just sort of a magic number I came up with.
so are you proposing that we kind of read them and do this now, or how would we move forward? I mean, I have copies for everybody if we want to,
I do too.
looks like Will does.
Okay. I think because Chris isn't here, it might be easier if we share them and then maybe we can email what we, kind of, okay, let's do these few items and add those to the FAQs.
Sure.
Email it to you, comments to you to put the 10 together.
Yeah.
I like the idea of 10. I think keeping it simple, something not too
Yeah.
many pages or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's exactly. It'll give a good representation of what that really means.
I'll pass mine out. Get one for Heather.
I'm sure we all wrote these up a little bit differently.
Sure. I've got an extra one here
Is that from,
for Chris.
Yeah, there's one extra, I think.
okay. So
Alright.
where's Chris? Chris is here, right?
Yes.
I'll get that there.
Great.
I made mine a little bit longer. I think shorter is better though, probably.
In terms of the phrasing.
Yeah.
Mine are very short, and I have them only electronically, so I'll email them.
Great.
But I like the idea of referencing the
Extra.
ordinance, because that's where some of the questions will come from, but also where we will go in part to answer them.
Right.
And I developed mine partly by looking at the ordinance. So.
Great. Yeah, so our goal would be, once homes or properties, I should say, are in the historic overlay, they're subject to our ordinance. And so certain things would require certificate of appropriateness, which would come in front of this commission. And it's just a way to simplify some of that information so that owners, like I said, the kind of common themes of, I want to do this to the property, is that, what are you going to require? What are your processes, those sorts of things. I did have an FAQ that was pretty focused on the process and not so much what would be an appropriate alteration. So, and I think that's going to be where a lot of the questions come from. I will continue to work on the guidelines because I think that would be really a great resource for us and for Heather's office to field questions. But it won't be something that necessarily needs to slow the process or anything like that. If we can get some of these in the FAQ to kind of get a good understanding of what what those sort of questions might entail. We had sort of, I forget how it was phrased, but John, you'd come up with the pros of being in a historic overlay kind of document.
In my greeting letter, you mean?
Yes. Wasn't there was like a one page that
Yeah, I think my first draft had a lot of that, and we revised it a couple times.
Okay.
And Heather, you were helping with that too, I know, with that letter, which I think is in pretty good shape. Do we all have copies of it someplace?
I have a copy in this machine. I don't have it in front of me. But I do want to make sure that has been reviewed by the city attorney before it would get distributed. So we'll just need to make sure that's all been reviewed. I guess we'll go back and make sure we have the latest copies and that they've all been reviewed and we're good on that front.
I have a copy if you need it, if you want to look at it now. I didn't show him, I showed him the first iteration or the first draft, but I haven't shown him anything since. So he
Okay.
gave us that initial feedback and then we revised it. And again, I was going to show him once the full packet was done, so we could see it all. I figured it wasn't really worth his time to keep looking at every draft.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think once we can get these into the FAQs, then that should be complete for, something really concise to put in a packet.
So Chris, I was under the impression you were wanting to wait till our standards and things about how to, these are the FAQs, which I actually thought we were in pretty good shape with before.
Yeah, so my thought process was we had FAQs, but they were kind of more about the process. And then we were working on a full guideline document. In
Which-
order to kind of move the process along without all the cumbersome guidelines, we could include some common scenarios in the FAQs.
And that would suffice for you in being able to push this forward and get to the packets.
Right, that was my thought. I mean,
Okay.
I'm open to
I'm
others'
in
thoughts on
total
that.
favor of that. I just think, we've been working on this for a year and a half, and we haven't done anything yet as far as, we've been writing the rules and the standards and coming up with ideas, but and I know we need to give Heather enough ammunition so she can respond to callers.
Right. And then the guidelines will be, a little bit more robust. And we already have a good start on those. Some of the items that you'd brought up and Heather brought up a couple items that just need to be added to that. And that, we've talked about this, that could be a living document as we get questions and, understand. Things might come up we didn't even think of. We can always update that. It would be available on our website.
Seems like if questions come up, they may be to Heather that she could direct them to Chris and Chris could direct them to us and we could get back to Chris and back to Heather.
Yeah, I think that would be
something
a,
like-
right. But we want to
As
make
I said,
sure.
I don't think we can have everything in all the details and the standards to answer everything. So
Right.
I think just kind of question by question,
Yep.
I think it's developed pretty good and just then see, what questions evolve and then have them, but kind of the process of say, have them directed to you. And then you could distribute them the questions to us and we could give you our
Your thoughts.
thoughts and
Yeah, I think, like you said, well, there's going to be things that come up we didn't think about. I've been kind of thinking about this in one process, and I wanted to kind of see what you all thought in terms of what kind of sample COAs we would get some variety of thought and make sure we're all on the same page about how those would work. So, for instance, a lot of these are, what will require a COA, and then the other side of that is if you are required a COA, what will the outcome of those be? And so I think we need to be armed with some of both of those. So that people understand, okay, what can I do that isn't gonna be coming to the commission? And then if I am doing something that's coming to the commission, what can I be prepared for in terms of, if I want this alteration, what will that look like? So we have some possible FAQs to look at. I'd like to, if we could all email out each other's, and then we'll kind of pick out, I can put it into a format, we can kind of pick our top 10 from there.
Okay.
And then I think that could consolidate that packet, really, be the,
I think that's good. And maybe we could work on this within the next couple weeks, do you think? Do we have to wait till the next meeting?
No, I mean, you all have yours already. It'd be great if we could get them, email them out and get them going so we could.
Let me email them to you and then let you compile it together. And
You can either, whatever, I'll compile them into one document. So if you want to just send them to me and I
that's
can.
what I think would be
Okay.
better.
Good.
I was going to provide some advice that just, as a homeowner, think about the neighbors around you and what their questions may be. Think back to when you purchased your home and the projects you've done over the years that would provide some guidance to someone. In our office, I keep trying to give Chris advice that we work with a lot of different types of permits or projects. So, from our office standpoint, we want the answers to those questions because, my administrative assistant's going to answer the phone 100% of the time and not have any idea because this is all new to us. So, if somebody wants to pave their driveway, expand their driveway, put up a fence, put in a pool, put in a hot tub, put in a pergola, I could list all those things. And I think that's the important information for us answering the phone. We don't want to funnel everybody to Chris because Chris is not the authority, on what needs a permit. You are, but we're the first, knock on the door. We want to give them good information and good advice. So again, that's why I've really been pushing for this information because it's such a new thing and it's an important thing and you're imposing something on somebody's property when they are set on doing a project next week and they're going to get the information of, sorry, it might be 6 to 8 weeks from now. So that's the kind of information we want to really tell them. Do I have to get a COA to change my doorknob?
Right.
No.
Right.
That's the kind of information we want to make sure we're clear on.
What would be the typical, for other permits, typical turnaround time?
7 to 10 days for a zoning permit.
So, but per our ordinance, if your project needs a COA, it would be submitted to Heather's office within 15 days prior
Before our
to
meeting.
our meeting, and then we would review it in our meeting.
Okay, so we could turn that around within 2 to maybe 3 weeks, I would think, at the longest, right? If it comes in 2 weeks before our
ordinance is like-
meeting,
Right.
and we
right.
make a decision,
Unfortunately, if it comes in day after our last meeting, it will, it'll
Right.
be a month. Yeah.
Or you could table something because you have more questions and not enough answers or not enough information. So it's hard to give it a timetable, but I just want people to know that if they're doing a project, they might also need a zoning permit. So that's the kind of thing we want to make sure people understand or at least have some information on when they make that phone call or get the letter and they kind of go, oh my gosh, what is this? That we want to try to give them information.
Yeah, I was thinking in the ordinance, I had to turn around with 60 days. Because I think if they don't hear something from us within 60, then it's automatically approved.
Is that how it's written in our ordinance? Okay. And that might be to give us 2 meeting dates in case we do have to table something.
and we can share that by email, I would think, so that we could all be thinking about it before we come to the meeting.
Yes, I would assume that we will.
I mean, we could share that a COA has
Go ahead.
been submitted,
Right.
and please be ready to consider this at our next meeting, so that
Right.
we're not surprised by what we read when we walk in here.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the 15 days. We have time to kind of digest some information, also to get it on our agenda.
Well, and don't forget, things just don't pop up on your desk.
Right.
Our staff has to formulate packets. We have to get the right information that we're required to by ordinance. So none of this is a simple process, is why I'm trying to poke a little bit to you the reality, the technicalities that our staff has to deal with too. So we need that time to formulate all that and get the information and mail the required letters, whatever else is part of the process. Because this is a zoning change. Essentially, you're looking at a zoning change on someone's property. So that's why we, again, want to have that information that's good advice to people so they have as much to digest as they can. I hate to say zoning change, but it really is. I mean, you're keeping your main zoning of your property, but then you're adding another layer of zoning that includes more regulation.
Right. And I think it's noted in our ordinance, we've said this in our meetings, that we would, of course, anyone who's looking at a alteration that would require a COA, we encourage them to do a come to us before they apply. We can talk things over. Obviously, if you're just trying to swap out your front door, you know, like Heather said, you're thinking it might be a couple days, and then it becomes more of a process. So we just want it to be clear that that's what that process looks like, and we may not know all the questions that might come in.
Right.
So we'll do our best to come up with as many answers prior to those, but some of them might be new to us, and we'll have to consider those as well.
Well, I think you should also consider your friends of the HPC who own these historic structures. They would
Right.
have questions too. And I'm sure they'd be
Right.
happy to give some advice or suggestions.
Suggestions on, FAQs. Yes, so if our friends have interest in helping us come up with these FAQs, anything you can think of on your properties that might, so what we call a major alteration in our ordinance would require a COA.
I was trying to write my scenarios based on my own house and things that I said I want, the house would have been white when it was built in 1890. And I'm pretending now like I would want to paint it yellow and with white trim. And how long would that COA take, and would it be approved? I mean, just things that would be personal to me. I'm not going to paint it yellow, but or would I, if I want to put solar panels on my house, can they be visible from the street or not? Those would be things personally that I would be interested in knowing about before I undertook any project like that.
Right. So I think, I think those are great examples of questions that a lot of these property owners might have. I think we also need to consider what the answer to those questions are, as we come up with this FAQ. We'll get the questions, but I think, we all are going to need to know what is the answer when they ask that question.
So what would you say if I wanted to paint my house yellow?
What would
I
I
was
say?
thinking we originally were talking about not getting involved with colors.
That's right.
I think probably if there's other historic houses of that era that were that color someplace, I would think would be appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think we've got I think that's, a really great scenario, because that's a common thing that happens in most of our historic properties that have wood siding, is that, they get painted on, pretty regularly. What does that entail? I think that, those are sorts of questions that we as a commission have to make a decision. Do we regulate color at all, or do we say, as long as you keep your wood painted? And
I think the ordinance doesn't say anything about color. Isn't that right, Will?
Yeah, I don't think it does.
So we would need to change the ordinance if we wanted to make that.
right.
But the other thing would be, I would just move my timetable differently. So normally, I used to paint my house. It's a gray, and I paint one side every summer. But if I wanted to do that under this ordinance, I would need to be thinking a couple months ahead
Right.
in order to do that. So that kind of information is going to be really important to the people in the historic district, that, yes, you can probably still do it, but your timetable for approval needs to come maybe much earlier than, thinking about it yesterday.
Right. And where's that line of when a COA is needed? Right, like you said, you were probably scraping and repainting what was the colors that were already there. Does that require a COA, or only if
Right.
when you're repainting the entire house? So I think there's a lot of nuances to this ordinance, which, references the standards. There's a lot of information to digest with the with the standards. So once we get all these compiled, so if some of them have questions, but we need to come up with an answer, I'll also note that in the document so we can all work together on finishing out the FAQs.
So with that in mind, will we be ready, do you think, by next month to proceed with our packet?
I'd like to say yes. I think if we can all continue to work toward getting those FAQs done. I'm just going to couch this by saying that we do have our signage project, which is a very large undertaking and will have to be a huge priority for us as well.
Right.
So if we can all manage to find the time to do both, then that's, of course, I would love to keep this moving forward. And I can get the guidelines into a format that would be digestible on our website. That would be my goal. So, I'd like to say yes.
Okay.
If we can all.
Good.
So we'll correspond through email and hopefully move this forward. The Friends of HPC, we have Historic Buildings of the Month. Remind me, Heather, what's the September building of the month?
Well, first of all, we just had Clazel listed in the city e-news and social media. So thanks
for
to Jan,
Yes,
one
thanks,
of our
Jan.
friends. Really appreciate that.
Nice job, Jan.
It's pretty cool to see the positivity on social media that, the response to the article. So it's, you get so used to seeing negative sometimes. It's really nice to see all the excitement out there and the memories that people share about a building like that. So
Yep.
that's pretty cool. The next one will be 207 North Grove, and we already have that written, and I already submitted that today. And it was neat to reach out to the homeowners, and they gave me some additional pictures that the previous owners gave to them. So it was kind of cool to include that as part of the article of what it used to be a church. So the inside of the church of what that looked like. So that'll be exciting to share that next month. And the month after, I don't know, I'm looking to you all. That potentially could be the Drains home. I'm looking at Rose in the audience, but that's, again, just one idea that we could do. We were trying to hit some of those homes that we highlighted during National Preservation Month, but again, nothing's on the schedule as far as I'm aware, and unless you want to add anything, Chris?
No, I think my only comment was going to be, we had some really robust write-ups for May's History Lives Here, and then we had some that were a little bit lighter. We'd love to kind of showcase all of them, but some of them might need a little more research. If anybody's interested in looking at that list and adding some more information to those, it'd be great to resurface those properties, kind of. Hopefully then by May, there's a lot more interest and we get even more signs for next May.
And one thing I've done, I emailed the owners of 207 North Grove because we had their information from Preservation Month. So that will be something, if any of you would like to look at that list and I could give you their contact information, that would help us out tremendously because we are just so swamped in our office that, that took me some time to, reach out, correspond with them, get the pictures, get the article together, add anything if they would like to. So again, that's something else that if you have interest in doing that, I would appreciate that.
That is to put together the final report with them.
Pardon?
I'm trying to get back to the beginning of what you were talking about. You would like help in putting together the final report? Because it sounds like you have lots of the
So-
material.
even just contacting them by email and saying, hi, my name is so-and-so, I'm a member of the Historic Preservation Commission. I already have that model email that you could use and adapt to whatever address you're maybe interested in reaching out to them. Because I think it's fair to get people's permission to do that first.
Oh, you're not meaning specifically then, oh, now I've lost the September?
Yes, so I reached out and asked for their permission first. That I said on behalf of the Historic Preservation Commission, we're interested in highlighting your house as a historic structure of the month, and that is what I started with.
Okay, so that one's already in place?
Correct.
Okay, that's
Yes.
the
I'm sorry.
part that I
September is done. Yes.
was paying attention to something else when you started. Okay,
taking
because I
minutes,
know
I
the
get-
owner there, but
Yeah.
So you could send us a sample email then?
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay. I had someone, I got to discussing like what we do with the different buildings, and they go like, where can I find these things? And I'm not sure how much the general public knows that what we're doing. And I didn't know if that's something that anything can be put in utility bill or something about the historic
we
buildings.
put
and-
it in the article. We asked for people to nominate a structure and provide additional information, and it's on our website too. So we give the link to the webpage, and people can enter it there.
But I mean, even letting people know about the website. I mean, this person was from out of town, but I got to talking to him about it, and they go like, "Well, that sounds interesting." Talking about the marriage mills and things like this, and they were like, "Where do I find these things?" And
So each of the articles, when they're written, when they're posted in the BG Independent, at the bottom of the article is a link to our website. Every time they're posted in the e-news and our city social media, there's also that link. So hopefully,
word gets out. It's
yeah,
more,
exactly.
yeah.
And I recently found, and I'm not sure who manages it, but there's a Bowling Green history buff sort of Facebook page. People post kind of stories about, and I've noticed they have also started to repost those buildings of the month. So they're getting out there. Hopefully, yeah.
Slow.
Yeah, we can put it out and hopefully people read it. I guess that's about it. And then obviously here in our meetings, we discuss them, not the history in detail, but so hopefully the word's getting out.
Yep.
Yeah. So we need in October, if there's a specific property that was featured in our History Lives Here that anyone would like to kind of.
I'll nominate Rose Drain's house.
For the October building of the month. I think that was a pretty robust write-up, so we could send
Use
it on
most
along.
of
Yeah.
most of that write up for the for an article, and you have nice pictures. Yeah.
So yeah, during lobby visitation too, if any of you have thoughts on it, we will keep that list and hopefully just keep picking away at those to get them into our building of the month articles.
I'm going to look at the list again and pick two that I will propose,
Great.
and I'll share them by email.
Yeah,
so
that would
we
be
don't-
great.
Don't double up.
Say, I'm sorry, I was writing when you. What,
Oh, I just said I'm going to look at the list again, which I haven't in a while, and pick two maybe that need more work. And
Good.
Because I think the Excel document has the write-up. Is that right? It has the write-up in it, so we would know which ones might need a little more
Yeah.
research.
Yep.
Great. Okay. On to our interpretive signage project. So we're really excited to get started on this. I've gotten a few emails from our friends and a couple other people who've reached out to me who said they'd be interested in joining a committee. So there's two sides to this. We have to get the actual physical sign design, but we also have to come up with the content that goes on the sign. And that's where I see our friends and the committee really focusing on what are we highlighting on these signs? And part of that's going to be where are they located? You know, obviously, certain areas might lend themselves to a specific building or maybe a broader story. But this is, we have a 2-year timeline. That's right, Heather, 2 years?
I think it's much shorter than that. Well, as far as, okay, let me back up a minute.
Yeah.
So we had to pretty quickly sign the grant agreement. This, I will tell you, is federal money. So it has to be spent in a very specific way under a very specific time frame. After I read the agreement, I got a little nervous. I thought, oh, we're in a really tight time frame with this. We had to, basically they used our project timeline that we submitted as part of the grant, and I wasn't sure it was gonna, fall that way, and it did. So if this does kind of get off kilter, we are gonna have to have the agreement updated and signed again. So that's why, as soon as I got that, I thought, gosh, we had to get moving on this very quickly. So I did write a request for qualifications, and we did send that to sign companies, and we have it posted, so it's out there. We gave it a pretty quick due date because, again, this timeline's very specific. So for example, as part of the contract, we were to start the RFQ and get it out there and have a kickoff really by August 1st. So you can see we're already kind of a month past our deadline.
Right.
I did talk to the State Historic Preservation Office, our contact there, Adam, about that, and he said, within a month he was okay with that. But if we go again off kilter on this, he's going to want to know that, and we'll have to get the contract signed. So it's a very aggressive timeline. I mean, we have it as basically having a celebration and ribbon cutting with them all done by May 3rd of 2024. So to me, this is very quick because, as Chris mentioned, you're basically working with a company, but they're not doing all the research, and that it's local history. So it's really our job to provide that after they design the signs. So as of August 28th, we will see how many qualifications we get from companies, and I'll have more information then. But as soon as we get those, I am going to want a small committee to look those over and score them based on our RFQ that we put out. So I would invite one of you that has some free time and ability to do this and turn it around very quickly to be a part of that. Otherwise, it'll mostly be us city staff with hopefully one of you. So I hope I didn't get you off track. That's just kind of
that's
where we're
perfect.
at right now.
Yep.
Feel free to look on our web page for that. There's a bid module on our city website that you can look at that, and also on our planning department page. But I did kind of work with Adam a bit to get that done because I wanted to make sure we represented ourselves. Again, this is federal money, so there's certain guidelines to follow. The Buy American Act is one of the biggest ones that we have to make sure a company is aware of. So he helped me develop that and make sure that was included. But otherwise, I felt pretty pressured to get that out the door because of this timeline.
Right. So we have once a signage company is awarded, I think that might be the right terminology, from the RFQs, there will be a process working with them to create what do these look like? How are they constructed? How are they installed? Those sorts of things. So I originally envisioned one committee, but it almost, if some people are focusing on gathering the local history information, maybe other people can be working on what do the signs actually physically look like. And then, obviously those committees will have to kind of coordinate how much information can get on those signs and that sort of thing. But to move quickly, I think they need to both be happening simultaneously. Any thoughts?
And I think once we have a company, we'll have a little better guidance on what that may look like. But my personal opinion is that the local history and developing that and the pictures
Yes.
are going to take significant amount of time and dedication and deadlines set. You know, we can't sit on this for 8 months and hope it falls in our lap. This is truly something we're going to have to make sure is very successful. It's going to be on a sign for hopefully 2 decades or more. And, you know, like Perrysburg has had theirs for over 2 decades. So we definitely need a really high level commitment. I'm looking to all of you on purpose because this is a huge project.
Right.
Do we have a number that we're looking at? I forgot
Number of
what we
signs.
asked for.
So that's kind of part of the caveat here. We had, I think we sketched out potentially 14 locations and gave some ideas of what we'd want to highlight on those specific locations. You know, the courthouse was one of them that we thought would be a great spot, you know, in the right of way, of course, but highlighting the courthouse. So I think, you know, I have to look back, but I think we have to do a minimum per the agreement we signed of 8, I think. I had worked with Adam on that because he had some concerns that we may not get all of those funded once we receive the qualifications and basically an estimate. I have concerns myself that we probably won't get that many funded because, again, everything is going up, not down. So
You think we won't get 8 or we won't get 14?
I'm thinking we won't get 14.
Okay. So 8 might be more realistic.
Likely, yes. But again, we won't know until we get the qualifications and we see where all the pricing is at.
When you say qualifications, you mean the
The sign-
estimate for the cost of.
Right.
And of course, we need to know what we want. I assume they'll give us some options, right? The signage company.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, yeah, we'll see when we get there, the companies and their responses. This is new for us, obviously. We don't have any out there yet, really, and it'll definitely be a project that we haven't had. You know, I'm used to working with, you know, consultants that are planning firms, and we're working on, you know, comprehensive planning documents and zoning codes, and so this will be something new for us to have this tangible product, but also, you know, again, that history component and, you know, pictures and the quality of the pictures and who's going to go on the signs, and it's definitely going to be a lot.
Right. So what I'd like to do is for the local history committee, I think it would be really useful if 2 of our commission members could kind of drive that, set up meetings with the people who are interested in helping gather that information and come up with those milestones that Heather mentioned. Maybe, you know, obviously we have to figure out specific locations and then some of the history associated with those. So I think that's going to be the biggest task, and it's why I would like 2 commissioners to kind of help
I
with
think,
that.
Chris, that you should appoint 2 of us instead of asking for volunteers, because at least I'm terribly busy, but we all are busy in our own way. So it's not a matter of who's got free time. None of us really have free time.
Right.
So I would prefer that you just said, ask us.
Ask anyone.
Yes.
Oh, no, did you get my email
I did
yesterday?
get your email.
So I've already volunteered. so-
Yes, yes.
Good. We have one.
So you're having a second committee on the materials and
I'm not sure about that. It sounds like,
the construction of materials?
yeah. Some of it depends on what the sign committees come back with at the RFQ process, I think. It sounds like Heather was asking if one of us could be involved in, you know, reviewing those RFQs. That would kind of help us all understand what these signage companies are proposing. But for the local history portion, I just thought 2 people would be a nice sort of, like I said, most hands on deck need to be on that, like the gathering the local history information.
And that's what I was volunteering for, even though I
Yes.
didn't make it
Yeah.
absolutely clear in the email.
So, Will, do you have interest in being that second committee member from the
Good.
commission?
I was leading more towards the construction
the
you know,
actual design of
the
the.
design, yeah, the design and
Okay,
that part.
You'd like
appoint me.
John, would you like to be on the local
Yeah.
history portion of that? Great.
We are short our fifth member again, and to me, that's a bit concerning, so I don't know.
And I did get a chance to talk with her this morning. I'm not sure what came up because this morning she implied that she was going to be able to come. She couldn't commit to being on a committee, but was, sort of let me know other ways I can help, sort of.
Okay, I'm just making an observation there.
I do have a list started of community members who have expressed interest in helping gather that local history information. So I'll make sure to get that all to
Okay,
both of you. So, and however you want to structure, I don't know if it makes sense to have a couple meetings, a couple of email discussions with these people before setting up a meeting. Maybe it's just something virtual and then maybe a meeting where you're actually at the library going over the local history resources. things
Jeff
like
and I
that.
we can talk about that.
Yeah, but great. And obviously, if there's any thoughts about location or specific items that we think should be, if any of us as a commission as a whole have thoughts, we'll share them. But
The signs, there's all kinds of signs that I have a lot of pictures, and some have a tremendous amount of information, and some are very, I don't want to say sparse, but more carefully documented. I mean, we kind of want to be thinking about how packed we want these signs to be. I'm personally not a great fan of having sentence upon sentence in little print on a sign that I have to get up close to read. So I think that's something that we want to consider too.
yeah, I agree.
How much detail we want, and of course if we're going to have photos on, that takes up room too.
Yep. Yeah, definitely have to think about the user experience. How long are people going to want to stand there and read
Right.
the signs and things of that nature? At one point, Will even mentioned maybe a QR code that could link you to more information. I don't know about that because that would be a whole website managed by the city and that would add another layer. But we talked about that as maybe a phase 2 to a signage grant. If we wanted to. move
Can a QR code be placed on a sign later? Does it have to go on
You
when
could
create the sign?
modify the QR code. You could put a QR code and then modify the content to it.
I'm saying, could you add the actual code to a metal sign so that we wouldn't have to have that
on day one.
up front? Yeah.
Yeah.
Leave a space for it.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great question to ask the signage companies, what,
Be maybe something inserted that could be changed.
Right.
Fiberglass or something.
but some way to have like I said, phase 2, where we talked about some more interaction. Maybe you have the QR code and it links you to a, living histories, video or from the museum. There's a lot of ideas of how that phase 2 could happen, but for this phase, we just talked about text and pictures.
Well, we have to be mindful of, the requirements of the grant, which is
Right.
you have to highlight a National Register building. So it has to be tied to that. Also, we have to have time for SHPO to review these signs too. So my goal is that every step of the way, I'm communicating with Adam at SHPO, so we make sure we're meeting our requirements of the grant.
Great. Now, I think based on where we had locations kind of pinpointed before, a lot of them were within our Main Street Historic District boundary. So that should help hit that National Register
And we had one to hopefully highlight Boomtown because of that being on the register. So
Right.
again, a lot of details to figure out, but I'm confident we'll get there.
Yep.
Like I said, I'm just pushing you all to be very dedicated and committed and thankful for our friends and others willing to help.
Yes. Definitely could not be tackling this project without our friends, so we really appreciate them willing to join us in this effort. So hopefully in the next few days, I'll get you that list of contacts I have. If not tonight, tomorrow morning, and then hopefully can get moving on coordinating a committee meeting or whatever sort of committee gathering, virtually or email or however you want to handle that.
Well, and August 28th is next week, so
Yep.
we'll be moving very fast as soon as we figure out, I'll be honest, I don't know if we have one yet. So, I mean, the hope is, we get enough interest of companies that we're able to look at those and review them and have that interest. And, knock on wood, my concern is that they come back, very expensive and it's well beyond our grant. So we might have to kind of think of a plan B there. So not to scare anybody, but you just don't know until you get that interest and feedback. So we will have to talk about that once that happens.
So do we have, because like you had mentioned, Heather, the prices of everything just keeps going up. If it comes out and we find, we can really only do 6 instead of 8, that's just an amendment to the contract, or is?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
And, again, we'd have to also look at our budget. We might have a little bit more that we can contribute. So that's something to consider too. Remember we have that Boomtown donation too. Maybe we could put that towards a sign panel.
The Boomtown.
We have, what's that, a couple thousand,
Right.
I think? Yeah.
When do you anticipate having to review those RFQs?
I would like to do it next week after we see how many we get.
28th is Wednesday, is that right?
No, it's Monday. I thought it's Monday.
Monday? Mm-hmm. Oh my, okay. Will, since you mentioned kind of being interested in the materiality and design, is that something that you would, You'd
I'm
be
going
able
to
to
be
join
in
Heather's-
Rochester on the 30th. I'm leaving.
oh,
I'll be
okay.
over there a few days. But if it's something before that, if it's to meet down here to go over them, I can do that.
I'll be in touch. I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
So I was hoping sometime next week.
Okay. Well,
If you could text me versus email, if you got my phone number,
I'm sure
that's
I do.
I'm more responsive to texting these days.
I've been a risk taker all my life. Could I just offer maybe an idea about like this historic building thing we had with signage has been such a success, I think. What about just expanding that with some kind of number system and going to a website or a tablet or book or something that describes more of these buildings and leave it as it's a number on the whole concept of something. Instead of
the sign would be a number.
Like a
that
well, the
you
black-
sign would be
guide you
a
to
number
something.
or product of the Bowling Green Historic Commission, and then if somebody was real interested, they could, instead of passing, look what happened to those books, those book boxes around town.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was a real novel idea, but where is it now? I mean,
Well, I think that speaks for having a minimum of text, but also pictures, because we have to also draw attention and create interest. But if we could have the QR code that takes you to more
Right,
information,
but,
do I
you
understand
could have
that?
signs all over town with different buildings that qualify, actually, so. You're gonna get a big expense, I think, of posting signs on each one of these buildings. It's just a
So
thought.
our ship's kind of already sailed, Dale. Our
What's that?
grant was based on installation of historical interpretive signage. So the project is for the creation and installation of historical interpretive signs in and around downtown Bowling Green, highlighting critical National Register buildings and unique people and stories from the early settlement of Bowling Green to educate the public about the unique history of the city. The project will accomplish this in a tangible way to experience local history and fulfill a key component of the Bowling Green Historic Preservation Commission's 3-year strategic plan. The historical interpretive signage will be a permanent source of pride and interest for decades. And of course, there's much more to it, but that was like the summary of our agreement
Right.
based on the awarding of the grant. So,
But it doesn't talk like it has to have all the history about that building on that sign. So I think it's like maybe a standardized kind of sign with a number or a QR code or something that refers to some other website or document. Sounds like it would still be acceptable.
We can look back through what the ins and outs of that agreement and what we'd said we were going to accomplish specifically. A part of this is part of the issue with the design and the local history coordinating is like the sign at City Park that outside the Needle Hall. Those are signs that are mounted to the ground. So if we have something like that on, the corner of Wooster and Main, how much can you fit on that one sign? It could talk about multiple stories, multiple buildings, versus something that's attached directly to a building. That's a little bit, adds another complexity because those are privately owned. Most of them are privately owned buildings, so these are all things that we have to consider as we're moving forward with gathering the history and creating the design of the signs.
I'd just like to say that since we have to draw on those structures that are already in the historic districts, right, so they have the designation, we should be able to come up with a list of 8 fairly quickly and then start
8
from there.
locations. Yep. Yeah, and Heather already put together a great map. Like we said, I think had 14. So I think it's going to be hard. The harder part's going to be eliminating some of those locations, and which ones do we want to start with? And hopefully, this is a growing project, and we do this one, and a few years later we can implement more. But yeah, narrowing it down to the 8 is going to be a task.
But we should try to do that by next meeting.
I agree.
definitely.
Or at least have a proposal in order to move this forward.
Thinking about foot traffic, which locations might have a lot of foot traffic.
Yeah.
well, we don't need to narrow it down yet because we haven't got our company's submittals yet. So
Right.
we don't know yet. Hopefully,
You mean a number of signs?
Then we'll know how
Yeah.
many.
But we can guess and we can whittle it down as need be. I mean, I think we
Right.
just need to
Better
have,
to get a start
yeah.
than, to come up with 8 just in case, right? We
Yeah.
can use that information in any case.
I can tell you all also that the Downtown Forward Committee has been interested in some, there's been discussions about some wayfinding signage and things like that. They might also have interest in coordinating where these might be or what they might look like to kind of keep a cohesive look of any signage going downtown.
Remind me of the, who's the head of that again?
So Dick Newlove is sort of our committee chair, I think is his title.
Dale New,
Dick Newlove.
Dick Newlove, okay. So we should coordinate with him a little bit as we're
Yeah,
doing this.
and I don't know if I missed the meeting this month, but I don't know if they've kind of started to divide and conquer some of the projects that have come up, but he would at least be able to tell you who to talk to.
Okay,
well, and Mayor's the one when we found out the grant, he wanted to be sure we basically had representation, which we do. I know Chris is on that committee, and so is Martha Wilkie from my office. So
Right.
there's no problem in coordinating with that.
okay.
But we don't want to be doubling efforts if we don't have to.
Right.
If they're doing things and we're doing things, we can coordinate. So if before our next meeting, we could at least have some correspondence with the friends who've offered to support in the gathering of the history. Like you said, maybe hopefully by the end of the month, we'll have a good understanding of how many signs, and we can narrow down locations. Keep that moving. Did we have interim milestones in our application for the grant?
It was pretty general.
Okay, that's what I thought.
So, assembling the committee and having kickoff meeting, the RFQ review. I put sign design research content August 15th through February 1st of next year. So basically marking that that's going to be the longest,
Right.
period of time that we have to do, all that work. And then we gave a month for SHPO to review our design and our narratives within those sign designs.
All right. February 1st will come quickly once, we're already getting into September and we have holidays and things like that. So, yeah. All right. Just so we all keep that in our minds as we move forward. February 1st sounds like it's this is when we have all the information kind of and a general layout of them on the signs themselves.
And I can tell you, I've talked to sign companies. They have called me with questions and emailed me.
Great.
So there's definitely
So there's
interest.
interest.
There is interest.
Absolutely.
Great.
No problem. We can do it.
Yes, we can do it. Okay. For our public relations and educational projects, we've been highlighting what some of our other area, community areas of places have been doing. So in the beginning of July, the Wood County Museum had their Boiler Bash fundraiser. It looked like a pretty good turnout. Hopefully they got enough money to fix up their structure. I saw the post that they were getting flooring put in, so they're moving along and getting their repairs done. For our future workshops, our Wood County Public Library has the Family History Research Genealogy chats. Those are monthly starting September 6th at 2 to 6 p.m. They have a family history research event on October 10th at 2 p.m. They also have a vintage social media in Wood County. I'm not sure what that entails, but that sounds pretty interesting. November 8th at 7 p.m. And Portraits of Older Women of the Great Black Swamp, November 9th at 7 p.m. A lot of those do require registration, so if you're interested, you want to check that out, either in the library or on their website.
The Portraits of Older Women of Great Black Swamp is a project of the woman who lives in the house that used to be a church,
Oh, great.
Sandra
At
Faulkner.
207
Yeah.
North Grove. Oh. Wood County Museum is having their Living History Days this weekend, right?
Yeah, on Sunday.
On Sunday at 2 p.m. They do have their music at the museum. Their next one is September 14th at 6 p.m. And demonstration days, fall blacksmithing, is October 7th at 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So those are always fun to attend.
I plan to go to Living History.
Living History. Did we, I think we might have had a friend who said they were portraying somebody this
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
Roses.
Was it Rose?
What,
Yeah.
what is your character?
I'm portraying Ethel Berlin.
Ethel Berlin.
Talk about it a little bit at lobby visitation.
Great.
Good.
So audio tours, I know I announced at our last meeting, we had live the first audio tour, which covers North Main. Ted was actually able to quickly get South Main done, so we actually have 2 audio tours of downtown Bowling Green on the Voice Map app. So Ted Long with Holy Toledo History was the one who created those. They are, I think there's a small fee to download those to listen to them, but I was able to try them out. It uses GPS, so as you walk around, it kind of knows your location and is able to tell you the history of the area. So it's pretty fun to,
Yeah.
it's just a nice way to, if you're walking around and want to hear something about the history.
That's great. And
Yeah.
that'll be available forever? How long does this last?
I think as long as the app is
Okay.
in business.
Good.
Yeah. So check out the Voice Map app. I think there might also be a way to do it on, a web browser as opposed to an app. But I just had my phone in my pocket, so that's how I did it. There's two separate ones, one on North Main and one on South Main.
So his press release says $5.99,
Okay.
and they can be purchased online at www.holytoledohistory.com/tours.
Great.
So we should all do that.
Yeah.
Let's make an effort to support. I'm interested.
Make a quick comment about that. I did sign up for it. It's $5.99, but the charge is listed from Singapore, and I freaked out and canceled my credit card.
Oh,
So just
no.
an alert that
Okay.
that's where the charge comes from if you do put it on your card.
So
Okay,
you're
thank you.
you're
Interesting.
you're a little nervous about that.
Yeah, it's like voice mapping. Is this somebody
Yeah.
taking my voice for AI or something? I mean,
Oh,
I freaked out.
okay.
So Ted does do these just because he's really interested in the history of the area. He went to school here at BGSU, so he spent some time in BG, and was interested in doing these. The fee, he did tell me the fees go to support the file storage of the app. So it's not lining his pocket. It's just
I
to
don't
keep
mind
that app.
lining his pocket, but it's a legitimate,
It's
a legitimate cost. Okay.
right? Voice map me, is that how it showed up? Okay, we'll have to keep that in mind.
Good to know.
Yeah. So we did have on here Tell Your BG History quarterly sessions. I don't have anything on that. I think Chris Tracy was kind of hoping to spearhead that. It sounds like maybe the library's doing something similar. And maybe, unless I'm misunderstanding one of these events that they have. So I don't know if we want to, I would suggest, but I'm open to other thoughts on maybe that's something that we kind of put on the back burner and
Table for the moment.
yeah, exactly. If especially if others if other community members are doing something similar. The workshop on historic tax credits, again, that's one that this gentleman, Eric from Finley, had a great presentation that Heather and I saw last fall that I thought he could come up here and give some insight on. Initially, he mentioned to me he was available in October, but it was right around when we had Building Doctor. So I think that is going to have to push till after the holidays. But that's definitely, I think, something that'd be really useful. SHPO did come up and have a presentation, but I think having one from the building owner's perspective is really going to help our community members understand that process. So, and then lastly, we have our Building Doctor program, October 19th and 20th. A press release went out last week.
Well, they don't give us the full press release until September 21st, so I think that was just more of a save the date.
A save the date.
Yeah, kind of an early save the date.
But it did have a link to sign up your property if anybody is interested in nominating their property as a Building Doctor site.
I know Anissa Miller has
She submitted
nominated her old hospital on Worcester.
on Worcester. Great.
And I tried to register for it by phone, and I could not do it. So I don't know. And I didn't have any luck going online. Has anybody else registered
Register for the event or for
the
the
event?
house?
For the
Okay.
event?
We have.
No problem. You did it online? Okay, I'll try it again.
Okay. I can check that too.
Are you both on for the workshop and
Yeah,
coming
the
in for a
doctor's
visit,
visit.
hopefully? Yeah?
Yeah.
How about you, Dale? Are you? No?
I didn't register for it. I'm still hassling with a guy with my gutters.
Oh.
It's been a whole year.
Well, that may be a consideration for the Masonic building that you talk about.
Yeah. It would be great to do a commercial building too.
Well, we do have some paint problems in the one room. One guy I talked to, what if there's lead paint in there?
What?
I don't wanna, I don't know if there is or not. But I just don't wanna raise any red flags about.
Sounds like a job for the doctor.
Yeah. In terms of that process of nominating your building, are there categories they ask you to choose that you might be interested in having them look at? Okay, great. So I didn't look at it myself, so you get to choose. I want someone to look at my plaster, my windows, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, great. That's going to be a great program, I think. Hopefully, a lot of community members are interested in attending. It's really informative to, get some tips and tricks on how to maintain your historic properties. We have our review of the strategic plan. That's what I was trying to get my computer going for, and it's not cooperating. So I don't have a copy of it with me, but was everyone able to take a look at that plan that was put together February of 22? Is that
22,
right?
right. Do you want to discuss it for 2 minutes? Or,
Yeah.
I mean, you want me to just read some of it, at least the major points?
Major points. That would be great.
So, letter A, the goal is to achieve city council approval of the existing Boomtown area as a local register as a first part of Bowling Green Historic District. B, project strategies, gaining endorsement from the mayor to meet the goal. And list 2 or more city buildings as well as county and BGS buildings. And that would have been police building, Needle Hall, University Hall, courthouse, and old jail, which we've done. So
that's great.
we've accomplished one task there.
Yeah.
Receiving council approval for mini Bowling Green districts from the Boomtown area. We haven't quite got there yet.
Right.
Receiving council approval for as many historic buildings as possible. We've registered, one at this point, like homes?
Outside of the city and county
Yeah.
buildings, right? We have one.
Okay, so
Local
maybe we can work harder on that. Completing a HPC inventory of the Boomtown area. We haven't quite started that yet. Maybe do a workshop for that. Creation of friends group, we have done that. Hiring workers using grant money to do some of the inventory, and that's something we can think about down the road. Arranging positive and frequent publicity and education about historic buildings. We're doing, I think, a good job with that. Developing community acceptance and enthusiasm for the idea of historic districts. Meetings with community groups, and we've done several of those, like Kiwanis Club. Media recognition, public hearings, forums, roundtable, promotion projects, and so forth. Placement of plaques or signs at historic sites. We're
working on that.
still working on that one. So those were the 7 major points that
Major
we
goals.
had.
Yep.
So
So we're
We're
making
coming?
progress.
We're coming.
Yes. Were there any concerns or issues that anyone had when they were reviewing those that needed to be brought to the commission? No? Okay.
I will add, it's on our city webpage, so under government, and then basically your boards and commissions, and then obviously Historic Preservation Commission right on that website. And I will say you're kind of ahead of schedule because it's till 2025.
Yeah,
That's true.
yeah,
We're getting there.
we are, yeah. We have to, we're checking things off as we move these projects along, so that's great. All right, if there's no other comments on our strategic plan, we can move to lobby visitation.
Sorry, I have to put my sunglasses on because I can't read otherwise. And my regular glasses are in the car. So I'm going incognito. Oh, no, I forgot to say, my name is Rose Drain. I have a couple of questions to start. The list of buildings already listed with the National Registry, one of you mentioned there are 14. Heather compiled a list of those.
We had 14 signage locations
Yeah,
for our
it's
signage
important.
grant.
Right, and they have to be listed with the National Registry. The buildings do.
Oh, the signage locations were not associated with specific buildings.
Oh.
The information on the signs will need to reference buildings that are on the National Register of Historic
Okay.
Places.
So I guess my question is, what buildings in the city are on the National Register of Historic Places?
So we have a National Register Historic District for Main Street. I can't remember the exact boundaries of that, how far north and south it goes. And then we also have a Boomtown Historic District on the National Register. The individually listed buildings are the courthouse, Needle Hall, and the
Former post office.
The former post office building. Just outside of town, the Wood County Museum is also on the National Register.
So this building, the facade, the facade
Right.
is the
Yes.
old post office.
Yep, there's a plaque in the back corner, actually.
Yep.
Okay, thanks. Okay, thank you. Let's see. Well, I did want to mention, to give a pitch for Living History Day at the Wood County Museum. One of the people being portrayed is Dr. Manville, who was the homeowner of the old hospital, which Anissa Miller is hoping to give to an entity that will renovate it and use it for a community-minded purpose. So Dr. Manville will be there. Besides Dr. Manville, there will be 7 other people represented. The focus this year is on the Wood County Fair because of the fact that the Wood County Fair celebrated its 150th, I think, or 100th anniversary this year. And of happening. So, and the reason Ethel Berlin was chosen as a character was because she and her husband were very key in making the fine arts part of the fair what it was in its heyday. So I am currently reading a brief autobiography by Ethel Berlin, which is in the Wood County History Collection at the library. It doesn't circulate, but it's 76 pages long, so I can finish it before Sunday. Anyway, it's charming as, very personal and anecdotal, and she mentions several things, one of which struck me poignantly because as I was reading it, the North Church Street School was being torn down, and Ethel went to that church or that school. Let's see. Regarding the packet that's going out to the North Maple Street folks, I have an interest in seeing the packet. I'm interested in getting it done because then I want to talk to David about perhaps listing our home or applying to list our home. So since you're going to communicate by email over the next month about the guidelines and the FAQs, you will have to vote on them at the September meeting? That's a question. Or can they be decided on before you meet?
I'm looking at our chair.
I know, I'm not actually, I think that we should vote on something that's going out to the community with that magnitude of.
And if that's the case, can it be reviewed by the city attorney before you vote on it? Because otherwise, if it's reviewed by him after it, then you can't see what his objections or concerns are
Right.
and talk about that until your next meeting, which would be the fourth Tuesday of October.
Yeah, good point. I don't know if we're able to vote online. That would mean we're
Oh,
having
you can't vote online.
a committee meeting, and
Right.
I don't know, we can hash that over a little bit. I mean, whether or not these need to be voted on, or whether we just compile them, and maybe there's a
Well,
way around that.
In any
mean,
case, I'm impatient, and I'm sorry, but maybe patience isn't my virtue. But it just seems like you've been talking about this for a long time, and if Hunter can possibly review them before you get together again in September, then that would move it forward so that maybe the mailing could go out in October.
Or maybe we could
Quite
just,
honestly, I think your opinion's more important as to what are David's concerns, and then they could address those concerns. I mean, why something like this takes so long is that it's a district. I mean, this is, when you send a mailing out to 30 people that you want to change their zoning, that's a big deal. I mean, in my office, it's a big deal. And so that's why you want to get that right. I mean, this is the first packet to go out in public. I mean, to rush anything like this is going to backfire. You know, look at the zoning code that took 4 years. I'm going to keep referencing that because it's very similar to the zoning code and that you're adding regulation to someone's property. So to say that, I mean, I think they've been very methodical because I think from my standpoint, it's very important that you get that right because that's when the myth starts that you're controlling paint, you're controlling mailboxes. And so you want to get a hold of that first and control the narrative. Rushing anything is going to be, in my opinion, not good because we're going to get all the phone calls if you do. So I would challenge you all in the audience who have historic structures to tell the commission what you want addressed so they can get that in the FAQs.
Okay, so, and as I was sitting in the meeting, I did jot down some things that I will send to you as, you know, things that come to mind, like the suggestion that those of us who own a historic homes, what do we want to know about what can be answered in an FAQ that people who will commonly have. Okay, so let's see. I wanted to take this opportunity to make fun of myself a little bit because I sent Heather a concern about the fact that Tony Vetter told me, who's head of Downtown VG, he told me that some of the timbers had been salvaged from the Church Street School and that they were laying in the demolition site. And I was quite surprised because when I saw the wrecking taking place, it didn't look to me as if any of that wood had been salvaged. So anyway, Heather responded to me that no, those were actually things provided by the contractor chosen to tear down the building to support his machinery as they were tearing the building down. So, however, I still do feel, you know, knowing that the timbers, the rafters, the joists of that building, knowing that those were trees harvested from the Great Black Swamp and that nothing could be done to save them after they had grown for a couple of centuries in the place where they were harvested from, and then existed in support of this building, and then they were taken away. So I think that's very sad. Anyhow, I went and picked up some bricks, and I brought some for all of you. So if any of you would like to take a brick or two, I would appreciate not having to carry this heavy box full back to my car. Anyway, there's a little piece of Church Street School for you.
Thank you, Rose. And it's good to hear a conscience coming forth. We appreciate your words. We did lose a lot of history there.
Do we have any other lobby visitation? All right, well then,
If you want some of those Black Swamp rafters, I can take you up in the attic of the Masonic building, because the buildings were built about the same date.
So you can cut a piece out of the rafters.
They're huge, huge bolts going through the.
yep.
What a wonderful building this is. Planning Commission.
Yeah.
You hit a home run with this one. So,
I can tell you kind of a neat story since you just mentioned this space. I don't know if you noticed the light fixture on the wall. So that actually was part of the original post office. And an employee in the city, her great uncle, worked and retired from the post office when this building was a post office. So when the post office relocated, they were throwing items out, and he asked if he could have one of the lights. And so that's the lights that he had hung in his basement for many, many years. And so when this building was designed, he wanted to give it to the city and return it to this original location. So that's where it's from. So it's kind of a neat story that I wanted to point out, that the city tried to be intentional about, having that history back, and how, what a blessing that this person had saved that light fixture and really cared about, really was proud of where he worked. And so kind of neat little story with that. And we're hoping that a plaque is back there at some point in time. And it would be great to even have a picture of what, the post office entry looked like originally. So wanted to make sure you knew that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great.
You're welcome.
I just joined this Bowling Green Historic. Are you all on that? On the computer, on the website? That Historic Bowling Green app? Oh. There's all kinds of stuff going on. It's Bowling Green Historic Society. It's-
What is it? What is it called again?
Just had it up. It's all kinds of, it's Bowling Green Historic.
This is a Facebook group, is that right?
Historic Bowling Green, Ohio. I just joined it. There's about 1,200 members right now.
It's on Facebook.
Is
All
that on
kinds of
Facebook?
pictures.
Wow.
Yeah, Facebook.
I don't Facebook.
You remember that Howard's building?
picture
That's
you-
where it
yeah,
came
okay.
off of that.
I wonder why we don't know about that. That's very
now we do.
interesting.
Yeah,
No,
it's
no, we did.
That's great. Thank
plethora
you.
of knowledge.
I think I already responded to Chris, your email about being on the committee that's going to review the signs and things. And I have experience with sign makers and stuff too throughout my career. And I think it's going to be easy to, incorporate that all into one committee. I don't think that we're going to need a separate committee in light of moving it along in a timely manner. So I'll be happy to join you on that committee, and I think Rose has agreed to that too. So hopefully we can get started soon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I second.
All right. Our meeting is adjourned. See you next month.
Get your book.